Hello everyone, and welcome back to the Steph's Own channel. If you're joining me here for the first time, I am so excited to have you. Now, it is early November in London. There are crunchy leaves on the ground. It gets dark at like 4 p.m. It's actually getting dark right now. And we know what that means. It's time to start thinking about the C word. While I appreciate that many of you don't want to start thinking about the holidays yet, if you're planning on making handmade gifts, you're going to be much happier if you start your planning and you start your projects now. This video is going to focus both on pattern recommendations for sewing and knitting gifts, but I'm also going to be giving you my best tips for a stress-free handmade holiday. If you're struggling to decide what to make for your loved ones, or you're just sick of last-minute panic sewing, knitting late at night like you do every other year, this is the video for you. Lots to cover though, so let's get into it. Now, before we get into recommendations for specific patterns, we really need to get in the right frame of mind. I've been making gifts for people since I was a kid, and as someone who's a relentless procrastinator and is just chronically disorganized, I have had some painful lead-ups to Christmas. Therefore, I want you to learn from my mistakes. There are 3 ways in which a chaotic approach to handmade gifts has screwed me over year after year. Let's unpack them and we're gonna find a better approach. Firstly, when I procrastinate, I end up just not enjoying the process. Making is something that I really love, but when you're on a tight deadline, it just sucks the joy right out of it. I'm also more likely to just forget things and make lots of stupid little mistakes when I'm rushing, even if it's just forgetting to buy the right color of thread or ensure that I have the right zipper on hand. I have paid so many last minute, overnight shipping fees around the holidays. Now, of course, you can solve this with lots of planning, and of course, I recommend that. Be clear about what you're going to make and list out everything required, including all of the little things that go along with it. PDF printing, interfacing, buttons, thread. You don't need me to tell you that. However, there's an even easier fix, and that is just to do less. Cut down on the number of people that you're making stuff for. Seriously, take the list of people you'd like to make stuff for and just cut it in half right off the bat. If you normally sew 1 to 2 items a month, planning 5 makes by Christmas if you start now is just not realistic, especially if you consider that in the intervening time between now and Christmas, you probably have more social obligations than you do the rest of the year. You don't have the time, so just don't set yourself up for failure. Another mistake I've made, particularly when I have a long list of people I want to make stuff for, is that sometimes I prioritize projects I can complete quickly over thinking more critically about what the recipient actually wants. This means that I just stressed myself out to create something that has probably ended up shoved in the back of a closet. So to avoid this, take the list of people you'd like to make gifts for and just really consider what's going to be useful for them. If you've never seen them wear a knitted scarf or a knitted hat, or if they seem to only wear black, just keep that kind of stuff in mind when you're selecting options. This also extends to considering the practicality of the items you make. Lifting a lovely colorwork rustic wool baby jacket might be fun for you, but the parents of a new baby might not want to deal with a hand wash only heirloom item. The parents also might just prefer an Uber Eats gift card, to be honest, but either way, you have to balance what you want to make with the preferences of the recipient. My last mistake, and probably the one that I'm most keen to avoid this year, is that my chaotic making has actually stolen time away from things that matter. The holidays should be about slowing down, be about spending time with people who matter to you, not about locking yourself in a back room to churn out a bunch of surprise gifts. My best advice here, remember that holiday gifts don't actually need to be completed by the holidays. This is particularly relevant if you're concerned about sizing, if you're unsure about someone's taste. Rather than gifting your friend, say, a sweatshirt that you sewed, write them a nice card with some pattern images as inspiration and tell them you want to make them a sweatshirt. Then sometime in January, when life is just really depressing and dark, you get to go for a coffee, head to the fabric store together, and let them pick the fabric, of course with your expert guidance. Now, if someone lives further away, you can always send them a few links to potential fabrics and then let them pick. Then you can be sure that they're getting a gift they love and you're avoiding some of that rush and some of the pressure. Plus, there are loads of sales in January and you'll probably get a bit of a deal. All of these recommendations are of course situation specific, but the goal here is just to ensure that you actually get to enjoy yourself and make gifts that people will truly value. So with these tips in mind, let's start talking about pattern ideas. First up, we have accessories. Not only are these often quicker to make, they're just typically not dependent on someone's size. Making a garment is going to require asking some pretty direct questions, and you just might want to avoid that when someone isn't a close friend or in your immediate family. There are a few types of accessories that you can consider. Scarves, socks, and hats are pretty obvious, so I'm not going to be covering those today. Instead, I want to focus on bags, totes, and baskets. Baskets are arguably a home item, but I'm going to include them here and talk about them together. You can just really get creative with these, creating everything from grocery totes to backpacks, even weekender bags and small items of luggage. I've spoken at length about my love for Tytka Studios and her really unique bag designs, which seem to cover every situation you could just possibly want a bag for. If you want something small, the wine holder tote is perfect and also easy to combine with some gifted pop bottles if you're doing like a Christmas lunch visit. If you want something even smaller, even simpler, consider her folded zip pouches, the triangle bag, or the sweet little seashell bag. I made Tytka's flower bag last year, which is also very cute if you just want something a bit more involved. She also has lots of larger totes as well and even duffel bags on offer. Now, all of these bags are designed to be made in regular cotton fabrics. If you do want something a bit more heavy duty, I'd recommend checking out Klume House patterns. These bags are still designed to be made on a home machine, but more in fabrics like waxed canvas with the leather and with the hardware. Again, you can keep it really classic here with the Oberlin tote, or if you want to really wow the recipient, the Slabtown backpack with its plethora of pockets. It has heavy duty padded straps. It just really looks like a high-end like cycling backpack. It's a very cool one. Baskets are also an easy, impactful gift option. If you're sewing, I highly recommend making some rope bags. It's really fun and meditative, and the results just are really actually sturdy and long-lasting. I've made a few of these. In fact, this basket, which I have here, is actually one that I've made using clotheslines. There are quite a few tutorials for these available online, but the basic gist is that you start with the bottom of the bag. I'm going to try to not dump my yarn on the floor. You start with the bottom of the bag. You're sewing rope in a spiral shape, just using a very wide zigzag stitch, so you're hitting both pieces of the rope. You build up that spiral until you have a base of the size that you want, and then you tilt the whole thing and start building up the size. It's all just one long coil of rope. The whole fun of this is that you can vary the thread colors as you go and create some interesting color blocking like I did with this one. Now, this basket here is made with clothesline rope. So this actually has a nylon core. That's what's making it so stiff. It kind of, it stands up by itself. It would stand up by itself even if it didn't have stuff in it right now. This is a bunch of yarn from my Estelle sweater. If you saw my last video, you know how excited I am about that. Another option for if you're going the rope bag route is to consider making a tote bag. Now, if you want to do that, you're going to need to use, I would say, 100% cotton rope, and you're going to use something that's much thinner than what I used for this basket. But the process itself is effectively the same. This version here is one that I made. I don't know how well this is showing up, so I'll include B-roll if it's not looking good in the film. But basically, this is a grocery tote that I made using the exact same technique, and you can see that I used some alternating shades of green fabric for an ombre effect. Again, this is really just one long piece of rope. I think that the rope cost me like $9 or $10 on Amazon or something. And this bag has held up really well. It washes easily. This is now, there's some holes in it now because this is the first one I made, and I made it 6 years ago. It's held many, many groceries since then. But it's just, again, a really long-lasting, unique gift. I always get compliments on this, and I've had many friends ask me to make them for them. Now, if you knit or crochet, you can also make some lovely bags. For knitters, Petite Knit has quite a few bags that are really popular, but I'm also mainly a fan of the bags from Paula Strict. Her market bag is a classic for the knitters, but I also love her crochet bag designs, particularly the Riviera bag and the Sienna bag. Both of these can be made either in a cotton yarn or in a raffia yarn, so again, very inexpensive and quite quick to do. If you do want to push yourself and learn some new skills, Mola Mills is your girl. This Finnish designer has some incredible tapestry crochet patterns available for both bags and for homewares. It is worth saying I don't actually really remember how to crochet. I did learn, I learned as a kid around the same time that I learned sewing and knitting, but I just really never took to it in the same way that I did sewing and knitting. However, Mola's designs are actually making me reconsider this. She has a few patterns available as one-off purchases, but I highly recommend her book if you want the best of her patterns. This book is called Crochet Crush. It has loads of lovely designs for tapestry crochet, lots of bags, lots of also cushions and homewares in it, even rugs and carpets. This is actually the book that I think I'm going to use to start crocheting again, just because I'm so excited about the things in it. Little treats for the home can also make lovely, really cost-effective gifts. Now, before we get into recommendations, I do want to reiterate my prior point about being mindful of people's needs and wants before going down this road. Home decor can be pretty specific and personal, so unless you know someone quite well, I'd probably just steer clear of really big gifts. Similarly, I'd always avoid gifting people more chores. Chunky roving blankets look good and can be quick to knit, but they wear terribly and they're really difficult to clean. Just be mindful of stuff like that. Anyway, I think the easiest way to think about this is to just take it room by room. Now, if we start in the kitchen, you have a few options for small, easy makes that you can finish in a single evening. Napkins are a classic. You get some nice linen, you don't really need very much of it, cut it into precise squares, fold in some mitered corners, and finish with decorative stitching. If you want a more exact pattern, I've linked tutorials down below. I've made napkins like this a few times, and they're actually what I use in my own home. Pot holders and cozies are similarly a very simple make, and they're a great way to use up some fun prints. There are loads of free oven mitt patterns you can download, which again, I'm going to keep linking these below. To make them, you're going to need cotton fabric, ideally like a medium weight, quilting cotton is fine, bias binding, and then critically heat resistant batting. Promise me you're not going to use polyester fabric or whatever random polyester batting for this. If you grab something from the oven using a polyester blend fabric or batting, or using non-heat resistant batting, it can melt or even just burn your hands. Gifting future chores is bad, but gifting an A&E visit around Christmas, much, much worse. Like napkins, tea towels are also very easy sew and easy to customize with some quick embroidery. You could even just buy some tea towels and then add embroidery on top of them yourself, and it'll be even faster. These can also easily be knit or crocheted and are just a great way to use up scrap yarn. This is another place though where I would just be really mindful to use 100% cotton or linen yarn. This is for one, just so that they can be washed easily, but also you want to be careful in case they end up a little too close to something hot. You don't want melted polyester on your stove. I personally love the look of the slip stitch dish towels from Purl Soho, and those are conveniently a free pattern. I can imagine a beautiful little matching set of kitchen items, maybe even with an apron thrown in as well if you feel like it. Moving into the bedroom, this always feels like an area where the little luxuries are really appreciated. I would personally be delighted to receive some silk pillowcases, you know, the better to preserve my curly hair. And high-end pillowcases in general make a great gift and are super easy to personalize. In the past, I've gifted friends Liberty Tana lawn pillowcases, and I'm always happy to see them in use. Along that matching set theme, you can also make heating pads. These are really simple to make, usually just like a rectangle. They can be filled with rice or filled with wheat. Some versions of these are also shaped, so you'll have a curve for the neck, almost like a travel pillow, or even like a vest shape to really cover the back and the shoulders. It just has to be small enough to still like fit in a microwave. If hot water bottles are more your thing, sewing a hot water bottle cover is really quick. Or you can knit the cover. I've seen some great knitted versions of these, using color work, using cables, even textured yarn. Weirdly though, I know two people who have been pretty badly burned by hot water bottles leaking or breaking, so for me personally, I'm too scared of them now. I just stick with the microwave ones. To round off this luxurious sleepy time set, maybe add in a coordinating eye mask. Ideally again in a nice natural fabric so it doesn't get too clammy. There are free patterns for these, but I'm also quite partial to this bundle from Evie Lalou, which comes with multiple versions. It has a cute cat, it has a unicorn. It's perfect for kids or for adults who just don't take themselves too seriously. Lastly, we should think about the living room or family room, or like, I think people used to say rumpus room. I haven't heard that in a really long time. Maybe it's a very, very American suburban kid thing. This is another area where I think it's pretty obvious. Blankets and cushions are of course very popular gifts. So rather than going over those same designs, I did want to highlight a few toy designs. It is worth saying that I'm a total amateur when it comes to gift giving for kids. Basically, all of my friends with kids live in the US and I don't see them a lot. I'm kind of off the hook when it comes to gift giving, at least for now. If you're sewing, Frux Studio has a bunch of patterns for really lovely fake fruit. I think it's so cute and they're just really intentionally designed. I mean, I'm actually considering making these and just putting them in our living room. The photos themselves are gorgeous, but I would probably just use, you know, slightly brighter colors for kids. There are also similar patterns available for knit and for crochet. I'm particularly partial to this giant strawberry pattern, which is nearly the size of a small cushion. I would absolutely have been into this as a kid. We shouldn't limit ourselves to produce though, especially around the holidays. I actually think that this ice cream cone pattern from Knit Spirit is super cute, as are these little knitted donuts from Julie Williams. The latter are designed to be, I think, like super tiny, so just maybe play around with needle size, play around with your yarn weights. You just don't want to end up with something really small or have lots of little beads, especially if it's for a very small child who could put it in their mouth. Now, last but certainly not least, we can talk about garments. I'll remind you one last time, it is totally fine and often welcomed to just ask people what they want and let them participate in picking out fabrics and picking out patterns. However, I've still compiled some of my favorite patterns for gift giving with a focus on sewing. It is personally a bit late for me to start doing gift knits for adult garments, and I'm just not super into knitted accessories. However, Woozy by Celine just did a fantastic gift knitting roundup, so I highly recommend you watch her video if you do want more knitting inspiration. Of course, you know, finish this video first. Now, for gift sewing, I of course recommend sticking to fairly loose garments, and especially garments for the upper body. This is just because I'm assuming that you might have some basic info about a person's measurements, but we probably don't want to go down the road of needing to take really detailed measurements or making lots of fit adjustments that you might need to make for something like fitted trousers. To start, robes are of course a classic. Robes are great because they look really impressive, especially if you pick out a more luxe fabric, but they're super easy to make. I have 3 different options for you, or 3 options in the robe family. First, we have the Arbutus robe from Helen's Closet. This is a classic shawl collar robe which can really be easily made in a wide range of fabrics. You can do a cozy fleece or a luxurious satin. If I were to make this, especially as a gift, I'd probably use something like a brushed cotton flannel, a cotton waffle knit, or even a bamboo fleece for maximum squish. Like most robes, it's a unisex design, and it also has some really thoughtful details like an inner tie to hold it closed, it has belt loops, and it has pockets. This pattern also has a wonderful size range, which we love to see for our gift sewing, covering a 33-inch hip to a 62-inch hip. A really unique alternative here would be the Kelly coat from Juliana Marteevs. Now, this is called a coat, and it absolutely could be, but the overall aesthetic to me feels more like a robe. This is also a shawl collar wrap, but what is so unique is that this is actually meant to be entirely hand sewn. I see so few patterns designed for hand sewing, I mean basically none, so I did absolutely want to spotlight this. The entire robe is put together with big blanket stitches, you're using heavy wool thread, and you could just really have fun with the colors and the contrast here. I also love that this is one of the few sewing projects where you don't need to make it in isolation. You can kind of stitch this at a leisurely pace over a few weeks while, you know, watching holiday movies and sitting around with your family. If you do like this style but want something that feels more like outdoor wear, Juliana's Nelly coat is a great option. This one is shorter and it has snap closures and even a little collar. I've seen some really fun versions of this and it just makes a perfect transitional jacket. Now, sizing wise, this is available up to a 45-inch bust. However, Juliana has another trick up her sleeve, and you can even order her patterns customized to your measurements for a small extra fee. So if the current size range doesn't work for you, or you just want to avoid some of your standard pattern adjustments, I think it's a really fabulous option. Along the same lines as a robe, I also really like ponchos and wrap jackets as a quick and easy to sew gift. I've made Stylark's Percy poncho before for my sister-in-law, and it was such a satisfying make. Again, you can really use a wide range of fabrics here to make it feel more or less casual. For the one I gifted, I opted to go for a fairly high-end double-faced wool. You really don't need much fabric for this, so it's just really nice to kind of treat yourself to something more luxurious. I also just really wanted it to be perfect, so I used block print contrast binding on all of the inner seams. I used lots of hand stitching to just try and give it a more seamless feel. I also made my mom a Megan Nielsen Hovea jacket last year. This jacket is a really straightforward make, and I made mine from 2 quilted kanta blankets that I purchased on Etsy. If you do want to hear more about that, check out my video from last autumn about sewing with textured fabrics. But long story short, she liked it. I mean, at least she told me she did, and it just made for a really one-of-a-kind garment. Continuing on the cozy theme, I'm also a big fan of loungewear and athleisure. Still easy from a fitting perspective, but with the right fabric, you can sew something fairly high-end that really feels like a treat to the recipient. I've spoken about green style patterns extensively in my activewear sewing series, but I'm gonna repeat myself because, I mean, for one, they're just a great brand, and also because, to be honest, that's one of my least viewed video series ever, so you probably didn't hear me say it before. If you do want to make some really solid Lululemon dupes, this is the go-to brand. They have coverage of men's, women's, and kids' designs. The sizing range is fantastic, it's very inclusive. I'm personally a big fan of their iron joggers and their brassy joggers, which are perfect if you have some nice stretch fleece or cotton terry. They're cozy like pajamas, but you can still wear them for a brisk walk without feeling like you're walking around in your pajamas. Similarly, their Reef sweatshirt, which is available in both kids and adult women's sizes, is a perfect dupe for the Lululemon scuba hoodie. This is one of the few types of sewing where I actually feel like I'm saving money relative to buying something of similar quality ready to wear. Lastly, for those sewing for the men in their lives, I know pattern selections can be really limited. Mimi G, the Know Me pattern line, and Norris Dantefort have some great options. I particularly like 2 of Norris's jacket patterns, that is Simplicity 3038 and Know Me 2038. If you do want to go down the jacket route, but maybe you favor something more workwear inspired, I would go with Merchant & Mills. I'm actually working on their unisex painter jacket for Josh as we speak. This isn't a Christmas gift. I mean, he watches these videos, he knows about it. This is actually a very late birthday gift. But what's unique is that the pattern is actually a collaboration with Painter, which is a high-end brand. They release pre-orders for their bespoke outerwear about 4 times a year. I believe that the pre-order for this like short coat jacket thing sold out in under 2 minutes last time. So if you like that workwear style, but you don't want to wait several months and you also can't spend several hundred on it, this is a really great option. Anyway, I hope that you enjoyed this video and you found it useful. Let's all try and have fun this year making handmade gifts and just keep the stress to a minimum. The world is chaotic enough. Please let me know in the comments down below whether you're planning to make any gifts this year, or if you have any favorite patterns that you like to use for handmade gifts. Let's inspire each other. I'll be back soon with another video, probably a makes roundup since I've finished so many things since the last time I showed you them. If you do want to hear more from me, of course subscribe, but you can also always find me over on Instagram where I'm at the same handle, just StephZone. Have a wonderful rest of your week and I'll see you again very soon. Bye!